Hello, everybody. It's me, Jamila, the IEP coach, and welcome to my live. Today's topic is going to be school culture and students with autism. And before we start, please like this page, the IEP Coach LLC, and please share this live. The more the merrier that joins, we can share the information and just, share information, have your comments, share, tag someone who you think this will benefit from, who would benefit from this live. Excuse me. So I'm very excited to speak with my guest today. Today, my guest is Quesia Raqib. She is the owner of Learning and Behavioral Solutions LLC. She is a special education professional, and her specialties are in learning disabilities and behavior. And behavior. Those are her two specialties. I can't wait to bring her in. So let me do that right now. Hello, Quesia. How are you?
I'm doing good, and I'm just so excited to be here. Autism Month, and just share a little bit of the knowledge. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. So again, please like this page. Please share it so we
Mhm.
can, just share this live. It is very informative live. School culture and students with autism. Also, I am going to put Quasia's information at the bottom of the on the screen, so we'll be going across the screen, so that way you can follow her business page at Learning and Behavioral Solutions LLC. So let's get started, Quesia. All right, so Quesia, what is your connection to autism?
Okay, so it's so interesting, as life would have it. There's no coincidences. So I started out as a special ed teacher, I want to say about over 15 years ago. I don't want to age myself. But the interesting thing is that my oldest son, who's now actually just turned 14 a couple of days ago, was diagnosed with autism when he was 2 years old. So that kind of threw me for a loop, because I had the connection somewhat with being a special education professional. But then when my son was diagnosed with it, it allowed me to see it definitely from, I don't want to say a different perspective, but definitely a much deeper, wider perspective. Yeah.
All right. So what was occurring with, and what's your son's name?
Oh, his name is McCann.
McCann. So what was going on with McCann to make you stop and say, okay, something's going on here. I may need to reach out to his primary care physician. Like, what was going on to make you get him evaluated?
Oh, goodness. So this is something really interesting, and I'm sure a lot of parents can relate. With this being my first child, it was a very confusing time, and thank goodness for friends who don't want to hurt your feelings. And the reason I say that is because with him being, he was diagnosed at 2. With him being my first child, with him being a boy, a lot of family and friends tried to appease me when I would notice something's wrong. Oh, he's a boy. Oh, well, boys talk late anyway. Oh, give him time. My ex-husband spoke multiple languages. So even that was a thing. Oh, because you're in a multicultural, multi-language home, it may take him longer. So these were all things that were, I guess, I don't want to say pacifying me, but in a way they were. But I had one friend, very close friend, may Allah reward her. And she said, you know what? I remember it like it's yesterday. I was at work, actually, special ed at work, and I got a long message from her. And I remember I was sitting, it was homeroom, and I read it, and she said, you know what, this is a link. This is a informal assessment to screen your child for autism, and I really think you need to look at this. And I remember thinking, like, okay, whatever. And as I started reading through the list, I had to excuse myself, and I had to go into the bathroom, and I just started sobbing, because I knew about maybe by number 4 or 5, I said, they're describing my son. They're describing my son. It's black and white. It's as clear as day. And that's really what it was. I had to see it in black and white. It wasn't coming from a person who either was trying to appease me or was either trying to, when we have so many emotions tied to things, it was just clear as day. It was a checklist. He met most of it. And in my heart, I knew, I would
Okay.
say. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you weren't in denial about it. It was just literally you
It
needed
was
it.
so literal. Does your child do this? Yeah, and like
What were
boom, boom.
some of the things on the checklist?
So it was, like not responding. Now, mind you, this is a while ago, but like not responding to his name, for example, which is a huge one. Not responding to his name, not making eye contact, wanting to spend a lot of time alone. Some of the other stuff may have been like spinning or overly obsession with objects, more interested in objects than people.
Okay.
And of course, I want to say a little disclaimer. As we know now, because my son is 14, autism and the research has expanded so much since then, which is a godsend. So not every child will reach every criteria, but these was pretty much like the standard hallmarks, and like he was meeting those also. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, what has your experience been like in the public school system, school culture wise? Culture wise, like,
Mm.
what has it been like for just students with disabilities, period?
Whew. Yeah,
From like the educator's perspective.
got it. And it is interesting because I do see it from an educator's position and the parents, both frustrations, to be honest with you. I would say from an educator's perspective, more resources and more hands-on. I'm speaking from my personal experience. A lot of children on the spectrum learn from doing things, learn from mimicking others, from shadowing and things like that. And what I find, and it's not necessarily the schools problem, it's a nationwide district problem, is that they're squeezed into a system. We have these state testing and we have this and we have that, and we're trying to squeeze these special needs students into that system. And depending on where they fall on the spectrum, or where they fall, even, I guess, the severity of their learning disability, for some of them, that's okay. But for other ones, sometimes it does more harm than good. It causes frustration on the teacher. It causes frustration on the students, because not everyone learns even without a labeled disability in that classical paper, pen and paper type of way. So that's where a lot of my frustration comes in, is that I wish we would have more resources to teach them in a more naturalistic setting.
Okay. So do you feel like school systems culture wise, it's like, do you feel like it's more a very generic, come on, we're all friends, there's no bullying? And what do
Mm-hmm.
you feel that how do you feel that they so-called are being inclusive with,
Mm.
I'll say, the students that have autism? How do you see that they are making the excuse that, we are being inclusive?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's so interesting because the irony, April is Autism Awareness Month. And I think I put a post on this. Every April, I have sort of ambivalent emotions, because I'm happy that autism is getting more awareness, but then it becomes like a hashtag, just like every, Black History Month, Women's History Month. And it's like, after this, it's, business as usual. So what I notice is that in school cultures, the inclusivity always is, well, I shouldn't say always, is typically on the surface. So, okay, it's Autism Awareness Month. Let's all wear our t-shirts. Someone will do an essay about autism. The children might be included in a particular activity, and then it kind of dies out. Or what happens, and I'm not talking about a particular school or anything. I've worked at many different districts, many different states. This to me seems to be a nationwide, actually even international issue. Is inclusivity seems to be the children just being in the presence of regular ed students. And it takes so much more than that. So, okay, these students will go to regular ed for gym and dance class. Okay, but
The
guess what?
specials.
Exactly, for specials. And then they leave it at that.
Mhm.
But we can't stop there. And even when it comes to that, there's so much pre-training on both sides that has to take place. So for example, even the regular ed students are done a disjustice because they don't always know how to relate to children, students with autism. So they might misinterpret their behavior. So you have these children, these autistic children, for example, I'll paint a picture in dance class, and they're in dance class, but they're off to themselves. No one's engaging with them. No one's interacting with them. And it's not that they don't want to, it's that they don't know how to, because they don't know how to interpret their behavior. For example, a child with autism may take longer to respond. That doesn't mean that he doesn't want to respond. It means that he's trying to process what you're saying a lot of times. But if the regular or the neurotypical student wasn't told that beforehand, he's going to say, okay, well, I tried. He's not interested. Sayonara, which is not the case. So I really think training, education in some sort for regular ed students is just as important. And then obviously on the side of the students with autism, of kind of preparing them of what this means and breaking. That's when the behavior therapy piece comes in. You're going into this dance class, is going to look way different. And there's so many components that children with autism, so many moving parts that they typically need to be broken down for them, so they don't feel overwhelmed and anxious. Okay, new environment, new people, new teachers, new expectations. There's so many things that they have to be pre-warned about, and then things typically go smoother. So
Right. Yeah,
yeah,
I definitely definitely see and agree with that. Now we talked about from um the educator's perspective. Now from parents, let's switch lens for a second. Now from the parents' perspective, your son is in school, he's 14.
yeah,
How do you feel he's being included in the school, in the culture of the school, for not just
yeah,
him but other students like
yeah.
him?
Yeah, I would say, and I call myself an advocate, and I think any special needs parent, you're almost thrown into advocacy, um, aka mama bear, or helicopter parent, whatever you want to call it, because you have to fight so much for your child, just as special. And I think, as fate would have it, being a special educator, we're used to advocating for our special needs students anyway.
Mhm.
So that's something that comes naturally, kind of, rooting for the underdog or making sure everybody's heard. But it really is, that is what it is 24/7. But I also had to realize, so I didn't become bitter. People don't know what they don't know. And so much of it is just educating them, even educating other professionals, of how to work with your child, how your child learns. What I learned, and this is something I always tell teachers, therapists, anyone who works with my child, is that don't take a snapshot of him and generalize about this is how he is 24/7. So I'll give you an example. It might be the first day of school, or it might be some type of assessment, or he needs to get therapy and they're doing some type of observation. And he just might be having a bad day. And bad day for him, maybe he's withdrawn. He might be a little bit more fidgety. He might start stimming, which is something children with autism, adults too also typically do to calm themselves down. It's self-soothing. So it might be something like this, or tapping, or something of that nature. But oftentimes what would happen is that they would take that snapshot and then create more permanent things based on that. So this is our observation based on that, these are his levels, so on and so forth. My son, for example, he speaks. I would say and I don't like to classify, but for the sake of classifying, I would say his level is moderate. He's not, I wouldn't consider him high functioning, but I wouldn't necessarily consider him low, severe functioning. Um, but I've had therapists or teachers think that he could not talk at all, that he was nonverbal because it was their first day meeting with him. He was withdrawn, he was feeling nervous, and he kind of became a recluse into himself. So to kind of answer the question is that when it comes to students, but especially students with special needs, especially students with autism, is that you have to observe them over a series of days in different environments to really get a clear, well-rounded picture of who they are. Because there's so many things that could affect. It could be the weather. A lot of students with autism, my son included, have underlying health issues. They have allergies. This is allergy season. He might have a headache, and these are all things that affect their behavior. But it shouldn't be something that's seen as a permanent fixture on them, I would say. Yeah.
Okay. So as far as his school culture, how I'll say, do you feel that his school does a good job of being inclusive of your son and other students like them? Or do you feel like, you know what, a lot of work needs to be done?
Yes and no. It's because it's almost like you never want to, and this is something as I think a lot of special needs parents can relate to too, you never want to let your guard down. Doing better, but still have a long way to go would be the best way for me to explain it. If I think about, oh my gosh, a decade ago or a decade and a half ago, where autism rates were nowhere where they are today, or even if I go back to when I was getting my degree in special education, autism was a few pages. Like, it's just mind-boggling to me, and now it's like everywhere. So it is taking people time to catch up, and I guess that's, like I said, I fell into the advocacy, but it is something that is ongoing that I have to remind him of, and I constantly do have to advocate for him because he cannot advocate for himself, and sometimes they'll misinterpret his behavior and things like that. But Jamila, another thing that I wanted to say too is that what I do want to see more of and what I do advocate for is that students with autism typically, and I'm generalizing, they typically lean more towards the adults. So even sometimes when they're younger and they're not in school, they'll gravitate more towards adults than children their age. And in school also too, they'll gravitate more towards the teacher. The thing is, that's because adults are much more predictable. But one thing I would say that school staff can do, school administration can do, that's really pretty much free, is to create I'm like free, is to create programs such as like a peer buddy system. For example, I did this in one of my son's old schools when we were living overseas. It is amazing the amount of progress that these children make when they have someone their age who's somewhat trained in how to work and how to just interact with them. And
Get
for
into the
both,
classroom with teachers.
exactly, but it's so not done. We always think, things have to be complicated and, so much funds pumped into something, but this is something that is very easily done. And to me, honestly, the results are very, very miraculous. Also, just and it also make it worthwhile for the regular ed students. I'm not going to lie, sometimes students are like, seriously? So maybe they get some extra credit, or maybe in my son's old school, we would give a celebration maybe once a month, and it was discreet, but to kind of give the regular ed students recognition for doing this. And of course, it should be intrinsic, but let's be serious, but just things like that really, to me, do create that sense of community in a classroom, sense of community in a school. For my son, for example, he had a peer buddy. He had a peer buddy in the classroom, which was excellent. And also alternating peer buddies who would sit with him at lunch,
Yes. big.
That's
My
at
old
lunch.
school, my old school was really big with doing that. None of the
Mm,
kids, even the full-time, it was a full-time learning support class. It was never just them sitting together. Like they would sit
mm,
together sometimes, but then also it was other students who
yeah,
I'll say non-IEP students who, would sit with them, their
yeah,
non-disabled peers, sit with them, do things with them.
yes.
And it was they called it it was like certain students who would go to that class, go to their classroom and help certain times
Oh,
a week.
wow.
So and then they
Mhm.
got recognition
Oh, perfect.
like
Everything they were
year.
doing everything
Yeah,
I
it
was
was like a recognition, but I'll say that was part of my school's culture. So it
yeah.
wasn't like, oh, what's taking you so long or whatever. It
Mhm,
was like everybody, I'll say, was aware that there are
mm,
students, and there you're gonna have peers who don't function like you, who may not
yeah,
catch on to things as quickly as you.
yeah,
So they felt included. So it
mhm,
wasn't like you felt some type of way or anything like that. And I think those are some things that schools and networks may not realize. Small things,
yes.
somebody to sit with that
Small
lunch,
thing.
somebody to
Yeah,
talk to during advisory, someone that can
yes.
during advisory. And I think a lot of times you have schools. Well, they'll go to gym and they'll go to
Mhm,
music and they'll go to art with their non-disabled peers. But it's like, no, you
exactly.
need more than that. No, they need to be in class
Yes,
with
yes.
them. And it's like, because all students, all students, everyone has a different learning, excuse me, not
Mhm.
learning. Everyone may have different um ways to
Challenges.
learning or
Mhm,
whatever. They
yeah,
may be in different placement, in different
yeah.
settings, but being just from me being co-teaching and seeing
Mhm,
it myself, like
mhm,
especially we knew which kids in our class. It's like, okay, we're gonna sit this person there, this one, because we know this person is
mhm.
mature enough to
Yes.
understand that they may need help and they can
Mhm.
assist them or whatever, or just check in with them
Yes.
if they see them, daydreaming or something like that. Oh, just
Yes.
we could tell them if you see them doing
Exactly.
that, tap their desk or something like
I'm
that,
so
or
glad. Yeah.
maneuver or things like that. I think a lot of schools, they look at it as, especially when it comes to inclusivity, it's like you said, oh, they're in
Mhm.
the room.
They're in the
They're here
room
with us.
and the
They're
work
here.
is
Oh, we're
done.
having a whole celebration. But I'm like, you don't even understand that you have to pull them in. You have to kind
Yes.
of coerce them to do something social, because they're not going to choose it
Exactly.
themselves. They're
Ex
not going to choose it
yes.
themselves. You have to
Exactly.
like hold their hand and bring them in
Yes,
and
literally.
stand there as a support. So you're not like
Mhm.
literally doing it all for them, but you have to push them and encourage them into doing it. And like
Mhm.
you may have to identify certain students beforehand, like
That's what I was
talk
going
to
to
them
say.
beforehand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
Go
I
ahead.
noticed, because oh my gosh, you just brought up so many amazing points. That's another thing too, is that who do you match them with? That's also so important because, like you said, you have to pick a mature student. You can't pick a student who himself might be a little bit mischievous or, have qualities of maybe being a little bit type of overbearing or
Yeah, or
aggressive.
may not be
You have,
patient at all, and it's like,
yes,
and then you don't want them getting angry,
and agitated.
right? Because then that
So
can lead to something, and then it's like, oh, he hit me, and it's like, I
what
understand, and they're not saying that, not saying where it's an excuse why he hit you. I
yeah,
understand why he did what he did. He's
yeah,
coming at
yep,
you the way you're coming at him. You know what I mean? So
exactly.
yeah, but
But I
yeah,
want
you
to ask Jamila, because that's what you described seemed amazing. What would you say is unique or was unique about that school from what you described? Was it that's like missing in other schools? Would you say it was like more so the administration, the teachers? Because when you talk to teachers, they say, well, my hands are full, talk to administration. Or then administration says, well, whatever the teachers want, we'll support. But it's like, well, it's not happening. So what would you say is
well,
unique about your school or that school you worked at that you were able to accomplish
I'll
that?
say it's really who, when you're co-teaching, it really depends on who you're working with.
Yeah.
We both was on the same page with that,
Mhm.
with making sure we included students. And then in my class, I co-taught and I had learning support. I had a few
Mhm.
learning support periods. So
Yeah.
me, and if I had an aide in my room, I would say, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Me and my aides always, I never had a problem with any of my aides. Me and my aides always
So
was on the
you're a
same.
unicorn. No, I'm just
Me and
kidding.
my instructional assistants, we always was on the same page.
That's good.
Um, and I'll say, as far as culture wise from the school, it starts from the top down. Your
Yeah.
administration has to buy into it and also embody it too, not
Yeah.
just say it. And you will have some teachers that are like, I'm not doing that. That's too much. You know, you do have those teachers. I'm not doing it. And that could be the class they struggle with the most,
Yeah.
because it's that teacher that does not. But I'll say in most cases, when it's like co-teaching or you're showing a teacher giving them a strategy, they will utilize it. But I will say,
Yeah.
definitely it starts from the top down. I'll say with any culture, any mission or vision, it starts from the top down, and they have to embody it, because once they
Yes.
do, the teachers will follow. But I'll
Exactly.
say, just that culture of just how the students were, that was just, I want to say, throughout every building, because it was like, it was not a joke to make fun of anyone. And I think because they saw it often, they had people in their own families who had a
Exactly.
disability. It could not be autism, it could be something else.
Mm-hmm.
So that wasn't tolerated at all.
Yeah.
And I can remember, my principals or my assistant principals literally sometimes at going to lunch, talking to certain students, is like, listen, are you okay are you okay if so and so sits with you guys at lunch?
That's
I can
amazing.
remember
That's
seeing,
amazing.
one particular AP doing that, or some of the APs talking to certain kids beforehand, so that way the kid can go up to them and say, oh, you want to come eat lunch with us, or you want to work
Oh,
with them.
yeah.
So again, it's you picking students that who are mature to handle that and who can help, because it
Yes.
does help to pull them in. They do open up a little bit more, and they may begin to be more, social, and
Yes.
things like that. So I'll say it wasn't no secret sauce.
Well, you know what? I wanted to say something about when you said they have a lot of times they might have someone in their family, so on and so forth. Because I've had so many discussions about this. This is part of a larger issue. Is that yes, many of us even have people with special needs in our family. Many of our students have people with special needs in their family. Have someone, we're all two or 3 degrees of separation from each other. So they might not have a sibling with autism, but they might have a cousin with autism. But the thing is, it was never labeled to them for lack of better purposes. And a deeper, more profound issue that I find is that labels, and this is shifting now, but we won't use the word autism. They'll say weird, or he acts, and I've heard it, he acts strange, or that strange boy, or that this, or that's that. And the students aren't saying this to be malicious. It's because the adults around them never gave them the correct term for it. And there's many reasons for this, because adults have their own issues to deal with. And I'm talking about this from a parent perspective. We like to hide, for whatever reason, we have our own stuff going on, or maybe ignore things. But you do children a disservice when you don't equip them with those labels. This is autism. This is what autism looks like. This is why this student is behaving like this, because when you don't do that, the other children are going to interpret it in a very different way. He has an attitude problem. He's withdrawn. He's aggressive. He's this, he's that. No, he has autism. Give those students a chance to be compassionate. But like I said, so I'm so glad you brought up that point, because I would say, definitely in the African American community, it's getting a lot better. But in a lot of ethnic communities, we have a really large problem, and I'm talking from the parent perspective, of just using labels and even getting to these diagnoses. And a lot of times, I think you even know statistically, the average Black, African American child is diagnosed with autism years after their Caucasian peers. Years after. And to me, a lot of it has to do with ain't nothing wrong with that boy, or he's just acting up. And it's like you're doing him a disservice, and you're doing everybody around him a disservice. There is something going on, but that's another discussion.
It is, and then it's, and there's so much that goes into that because
Mhm.
it's like, well, I don't want to because I don't want that label, and then I
Yes.
don't want you feeling like you need to medicate my kid because just like
Yes.
Americans, how we feel about
Yep.
just medication and certain things and just the history,
Yep.
being like an experiment, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? So it's that too, but then a lot of it is denial. Like it's not like you said,
Yeah.
it's nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, he'll grow out of that. And it's like
Yeah.
you're wasting so much time and so much
Mhm.
time is passing when we could be getting him or her support.
Support. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh my
All right. So
goodness.
Quasia, I got just one more question for you.
Okay.
So what would you say is the solution to cultivating more
Mhm.
authentic school cultures that truly are inclusive to students with disabilities and students with autism?
Okay. I would say, and like I'm part of quite a few Facebook groups and things like that, special needs, so on and so forth. But a lot of times, what I hear from other parents is that the social integration is just as important, if not more important, than the academics. So, okay, my son, he may be 14. Um, he may be reading at a second grade level, but guess what? Try to find a way to get him into that regular ed classroom. Get as many, this is what parents have to say, get as many shadows as we need, get more funding, get more peer buddies, but they really need to spend more time around their non-disabled peers. What typically happens is that, to me, and we all know this, a self-contained classroom is the last option. And the reason this is the last option is that they're around other students who have the same exact disabilities, for lack of a better word, as them. So now they are learning how to be, forgive my French, I don't want to be offensive, but learning how to be more disabled, because they learn through example, they learn through mimicking. And the norm and the yardstick sometimes is not they're not necessarily always being pushed or motivated. So I would say, to me, and I'm speaking from a parent point of view, yes, academics are important, but social skills, social integration is just as important or more. So find ways to get those students in, unless they have a severe behavioral issue. I don't see why. I don't see why a student with autism with no behavioral issues can't be in the regular ed classroom more, spend more time in the regular ed classroom with the appropriate supports. To me, that's a much better environment than having him spend 90% of his time in a self-contained classroom with
Or
a
a
classroom
co-teaching
full of students.
environment,
No one's talking. I just don't see how that's beneficial to them in the larger scheme. So I
or
would say that's
having
what.
and,
Mhm.
and also having schools actually investing in the co-teaching model and
Yeah.
training people, actually
Mhm.
training their teachers in the co-teaching model, because
Yes.
then you will have the support of two teachers. Not saying that you're
Mhm.
going to put all of these autistic children in
Yeah.
one class,
People are
because
like,
one, no, you don't do that, because
yeah.
then you'll make it, then you're not going to have a heterogeneous class,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that also helps to
Mhm.
support the kid in the classroom. 'Cause it's like, oh, he got
Yes.
two teachers now. One teacher could walk
Yes.
away, and then it's like he's doing something. Another,
Mhm.
he has the support from two teachers, and then also, like you said, just that socialization, like they can switch off how they can incorporate
Mhm.
them and cultivate them into the classroom culture,
Yes.
the classroom environment, and then also just school wide, you know, that helps the school culture as well, because okay, well, every class we're all doing
Mhm.
the same thing, so then it becomes a
Yes.
school wide culture.
I
So
agree. I
yes,
agree so much. And what you said about the co-teaching, um, two things. One, when when someone learns how to work with students with disabilities, and this really helps for the regular ed teachers, when they can, because as special educators, we can work with everyone. We've learned to work with but the reverse isn't always true. But to me, it's even a benefit to the regular ed teacher, because now you can work with all students, and even the ones who don't have a disability, they still have different learning styles. But one other thing when it comes to the co-teaching, and this is how
It's
one other,
okay.
I'm like this. Okay, well, it's just gonna run. Okay.
Well, I think you can click it on the side of your
Okay.
phone.
What? Hold, sorry, guys. Sorry, give me one. You know what? I shut my phone. Okay, there it was, because I put it on airplane mode.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
We're
What
almost
was it?
there. We're almost there. We're almost there.
Right. So what I was going to say is that about the co-teaching. So a few things when it comes to co-teaching, even when it comes to paraprofessionals, is that there's just so much advocacy mixed in with our work, because what I've seen sometimes too is that a co-teacher will be in a classroom and they'll pull that co-teacher out to go sub, or they'll take that para and say, oh, you're needed over here. And it's like, no, that para was assigned, or that one-on-one was assigned to that student, or that co-teacher is in that classroom for a reason. But what I've noticed too is that unless a child or children have severe behavioral issues, the administration or
And that
even,
support will stay.
yeah, then that support will stay.
And
But
it's
if
like,
that child,
why are we so reactive and not proactive at all?
exactly. But if that child doesn't have a behavioral issue, then it's almost as if they don't see why all these adults or all these supports need to be in a classroom. And it's really sad. So that's even something that we have to also advocate for too. There's other reasons why a special needs child needs support outside of behavioral issues, you know. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. I can remember having I've had my share of autistic students, and I remember one year I had one student, and his one-to-one came to every single class. She was telling me things that they were working on outside of school, so I made sure to reinforce it in the
Yeah.
classroom. And I think sometimes teachers look at like don't understand, like, oh my God, somebody else in my classroom, and it's like use them to your advantage. They are going to help you to
Yeah.
educate this kid. Like they're going to help you like with this student, like, and I think just having that overall respect and
Yeah.
just listening, because again, they're going to help you. And he wound up being the top student in the class. Like he wound up being the top student in the
Wow.
class. So he was getting an award at the end of the year. And I never
Oh,
forget, it was him, his mother, and his therapist. We all
oh.
had to talk and support him, because he was like, I'm not going. I'm not going to get up and get the award. He was like, I'm not getting up. So I had to
Oh.
explain to him. So I told mom, I said, I'm going to explain to him what goes
Mhm.
on at the ceremony and
Yeah.
what all he has to do,
Yeah.
and let the therapist know, so that way we can support him that way.
Yeah.
So we did that, and he was like, all right. Because I said, listen, all you do, they're going to call your name. You're going to
Mhm.
come up, you
Mhm.
shake each teacher's hand, and then you go
Yes.
down. That is it.
Yes.
So then the day of, he gets up, shakes our hand, but then the principal did something extra, and he just froze like that wasn't part of
Uh-oh.
it.
Wasn't
It was
planned.
it was hilarious. He looked at me. I said, "Just take it. Go sit down." It was hilarious, but it was like,
Yep.
but I knew what he was thinking. Like, that's not what Miss Bashir showed me. That's not what
Yep.
we practice. That's not
Yep.
what she told me. But it's just things like that you may have to do,
Yep.
because it's like you kind of gotta prep them for it.
You do. You
So it's like,
do.
and then it's like sometimes it's like their blueprint. They'll do it
Yeah.
over and over and over until it's like
Mhm.
they're comfortable enough to just
Yes.
move away from it and do their own. But it's like
Mhm.
those things are necessary to
Yes.
do. And I think it's like you were saying, it's
Mhm.
important to identify the extra support that's needed and
Mhm.
have it in a classroom, and not pull it. Like I can remember when um if one of us was absent, or no, they needed
Mhm.
coverage, and they was like, listen,
Go figure. Needed
we
coverage.
used
The
to be like,
extra adult. Yeah.
me and my teacher would be like, you can't pull her. I said, I cannot be
Exactly.
pulled from this period, this period. I
Mhm.
cannot.
Yep.
You can pull me from these other period. Don't pull me from
Mhm.
these two.
Yeah.
Because we knew that we had to advocate for ourselves, because we knew the
Yes.
needs of the kids in those particular classes. It was like, listen,
Yes.
no, don't pull. Or it's like if it was a
Yes.
sub, we were like, listen, make sure somebody comes in. If one of us is absent, make sure somebody comes in on these periods. Somebody has
Yes.
to come in,
Has to.
but yeah, it does go back to just the understanding, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
the importance of having the support
Mm-hmm.
there for the students to help with the socialization, the social skills, because those are
Yeah.
very important, extremely important, like
So
you said,
important.
because they help them in just their life. It helps them
Yeah.
to navigate other situations that will
Yeah.
arise in their lives. And then they just, not saying that they don't grow academically, because they do grow academically,
They do.
but just that social piece, it just goes a
Yeah.
little bit further, because now they may not be so off to themselves
Mm-hmm.
as
Yeah.
much. We may still do a
Yeah.
little bit, but they may slowly get to the point where it's like they can
Mm-hmm.
respond to you. I've said good
Yes.
morning. I've said good morning to you so many times, and now you're actually saying, "Oh, good morning," and how are
Good
you? And I'm
morning.
like,
Yes.
"Oh my God, you never asked me how am I doing?" You know?
Exactly. It
But
comes
it's
back.
just that,
Yeah.
right. It's just that constant
But you
practice.
know what, Jamila, too, and I want to say is like the social skills are the foundation, because even for a child, and I teach students, I teach students advocacy. Also, self-advocacy is so important, especially as children with special needs autism get older. But that can occur without appropriate social skills. So even if they're in class and they don't understand something, or they're confused, or they have to go to the bathroom, instead of acting out behavior wise, they can do it in an appropriate way. They can raise their hand, they can take their peck or whatever they can, but this requires social skills. So to me, I still go back to social skills as really the foundation, even for learning to, and that's, yeah. So I just wanted to, I can't emphasize that enough.
All right. Thank you so much. Before I let you go, Quasi, I'm just going to recap some of the solutions we discussed in this live. So, in order to cultivate a more authentic school culture that is inclusive to students with autism, you definitely said, definitely starting from the top down, the leadership has to not only speak it but also embody it, so that way others follow suit. You discussed having the do initiating like a buddy system within the classrooms, but teachers identifying those mature students who can be the buddies, because they can just grow so much socially and have somebody their age, a peer who they can connect with. You did also stress the importance of having the proper support in the classroom for students with autism, whether that be speech or the counselor, or it could be a TSS worker, depending on the needs of the student. Have those professionals come in the classroom to support the kid, because that also supports the teacher on how to grow socially in the classroom. You stress the socialization piece a
Yes.
lot.
Mm-hmm.
You said academics is very important, of course, and having students, depending if their needs are very severe, then it's understandable they're in a different setting. But
Yeah.
if their needs are not severe, they should be in the general education environment with their non-disabled peers, so that they can get that socialization piece as well. We touched on co-teaching being a great placement, for some, because you do have the two teachers. You do the teachers can like just partner off each other with, okay, I'm gonna support so and so
Yes.
this particular, with this particular piece of the lesson. You will support with this particular piece of the lesson. Then you can identify which students you want to do, how they're going to do the group work, partner work, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then lastly, you just touched on um, districts just putting more money into proper support overall, just
Mm-hmm.
for students with autism. Is there any other things I left off that you want to make sure we share?
One last thing I would just like to mention for the parents, with the school, most of the school years are coming to a close, is depending on the level of your child, you can sort of try to prep them for the upcoming school year by creating something as simple as a social story. So find out who their teacher is going to be for next year. Find out what classroom if they're going to be in. If they are graduating and going to be in a completely different school, figure out things you can do over the summer to prepare them for that. So it could be taking pictures. It can be actually, if administration allows, over the summer, they can take a walkthrough to their new classroom. And the familiarity of it will definitely decrease that anxiousness. So that's just something that parents can work on to prepare their students for the upcoming school year.
I like that point you brought up, and I'm just gonna just stretch it a little further. Like, just even teachers, reach out to your administrators or your supervisors to see if you can take a trip to the next school. That's something I did because after my students left my school, they were going to another school. So at the end of the year, I would reach out to the case manager at that school.
That's perfect.
And pick a date, and then she would have current students that I had previously. She would have them do a tour. She would pick two of them. They would do a tour, and then I would have my students prepare questions to ask, so that way when they went there, the student tour guides would answer the questions for them. And then I would say, what advice can you give them? And then sometimes I would say, now, didn't I tell you to do all this before? I would joke around, and they was like, Miss Fisher, you didn't lie. You was telling me. It was like, listen to everything she's telling you. They would do something like that. But that is something very, very, I would say,
that's amazing. I love it.
Do, because like you said, it helps them get some familiarity. It kind of decreases that anxiety they may have, especially if they know perhaps that may not be your case manager or may not be your teacher, but the fact that you have a familiar face now, we will also get to meet the principal at that school. And so they would know who he or she was, or things like that. Like, those are very important. And and in the case that your school is unable to do it, parents, you can, go yourself. Because if your teacher is going to that school next year, you can definitely contact the principal, contact whoever, to say, listen, my son or my daughter is going to be coming to the school. They have these particular needs. I just want to make sure they have some familiarity, blah, 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 blah. And then we wound up doing it for one of the lower grades that will be coming to me the following year. I did it. This is like the first time we did it. And I picked two mature kids that I knew who could handle it, because you got to know who can handle it.
Definitely.
And they did a phenomenal job. And I even reached out to one of the kids' therapists. I said, I just want you to know, I picked him as one of these student tour guides. He did a phenomenal job. I just want you to know, he was very mature about it. He answered their questions. It was really good. And he was so happy that I shared that with his therapist. Because again, and I would say this was one of the best, partnerships I've ever experienced in my career, because it was literally myself, mom, therapist, advocate. Mom had an advocate because it was a language barrier. And the advocate had a background in education as well. And he had his therapist. And when I tell you, we worked so well together, there was no, the advocate wasn't nasty, didn't have an attitude or anything like that. She understood that I really was trying to support the kid and push him at the same time. So I want to say that was like one of the best, like, I'll say, how I say it takes the village. That was like one of the best experiences I have ever had, because a lot of times you're fighting somebody on your team, and it's like, listen, we're all trying to support this kid. But like, definitely, if you can do those trips, definitely, or even in your building, let's say, okay, they're going to the next grade.
Yeah.
Find out who the teacher is, or just know, okay, these are the 5th grade teachers, or these are the 6th grade teachers. See if you can like just introduce them, like, oh, Jonathan, this is Mr. So-and-so. He teaches 7th grade math, or you know what I mean? Doing little
small little things, but make such a huge difference in the life of this child.
Yes, it does. All right, Quesia, you want to tell all the viewers where they can find you? I know I have it scrolling here, but tell them more about your business, Learning and Behavioral Solutions LLC, and also how they can contact you.
Okay. So yes, thank you so much, Jamila. So the name of my business is Learning and Behavioral Solutions LLC, and I really focus on teaching self-advocacy skills to special needs students, how they can advocate for themselves this in the classroom, in the school, and in the community at large, and how parents can also contribute to that. I can be found on my Facebook page, Learning and Behavioral Solutions, Instagram at Quesia Raqib, and working on the website as we speak. But definitely reach out. I'm very passionate about this work as Jamila, and this is something that is 24/7 for us. So I just want to thank you, Jamila, for giving me this platform during Autism Awareness Month to discuss something I'm so passionate about.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Quesia. And everyone stay tuned. I'll be putting out the post so you know some other lives that I'll be doing for Autism Awareness Month. Until next time, peace.
Yeah.
Hold on.